From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
The nostalgia of summer nights and the silver screen.
Enjoy the movie, guys.
We'll visit one of the last drive-ins in South Dakota. Plus, using a prescribed burn to battle ticks and flies. As meat exporters work to increase market share in Japan.
I want to tell the Japanese audience that how we can appreciate American beef.
And summer showers battle against high heat for a drought expansion standoff. Today on AgDay.
AgDay, presented by Pioneer. What's next happens when the testing grounds meet the proving grounds. Pioneer. What's next happens here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Spotty rains and high heat dominating the weather conversation last week. Well, this week, a new drought monitor shows moderate drought or worse expanding, but it's impacting fewer Americans. Now, this is the latest map from the first week of August. More than half of the continental U.S. facing some level of drought or dryness. That's up a point from last week. The areas in the worst stages of drought, either D3 or D4, well, it's mostly unchanged from a week ago. This map also showing you where dryness has improved and rains fell over the past week. The improvements shown there in green, while places like eastern Iowa, Minnesota saw pockets get worse. 57% of the corn crop now affected by drought, 51% of soybeans. Well, drought, it's ultimately impacting some 67 million Americans, which is down from almost 73 million last week. Now, last week's widespread heat did impact pasture and rangeland.
USDA NASS reporting very poor ratings across 29% of the U.S. pastures and rangelands. That's a sharp 5 percentage point increase from the previous week. Meanwhile, the good to excellent rating dropping to 39%, down from 44% good to excellent the previous week.
Meanwhile, places like California, Utah, and Wyoming saw at least 60% of pasture and range conditions rated good to excellent. Rains are falling across parts of the country, even as drought ticks slightly higher. Here with our first forecast, meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht. And Matt, August rains are key for those soybean yields.
Yeah, talking about August rains. Now, the good news is we're trending in a favorable direction for more widespread showers rather than pockets of heavy downpours. The jet stream, that ridge of high pressure that was dominating 2/3 of the United States, will start to retreat and move back down here more to the southwest. What that's going to do is open things up right along the plains for more rain coming through this weekend and next week. In the immediate future, you kind of start to see where the rain is set to fall. Through our Friday, Saturday, this is Sunday at 6 a.m. Colors start to show up right where we need it most. That includes the Dakotas, but also in and across Iowa. Notice there's a shallow pocket right there in Iowa that desperately needs some rain. As we get into next week, that energy in the jet stream will start to shift more to the north, which should help some of those showers kind of come in and across Iowa, Wisconsin, and northern Michigan. The bottom line is that we're trending for a more favorable August rain for the soybeans coming up as we go through the rest of the month. Again, that's a look at the precipitation estimate through Sunday at 6 a.m. Coming up in a little bit, we'll be looking at what's going on with the jet stream and where this overall trend comes from. Now, check this out. Cotton harvest is now rolling in Texas, at least in the southern part of the state. This video is just outside of Corpus Christi. It looks like a pretty nice crop there. And of course, I am a good judge of cotton harvest, but I'll have more on your forecast. Good judge on where we go from here regarding the rains coming up.
Efforts to continue Ukrainian ag exports are underway despite the recent attacks on the country's busiest ports. New reports indicating Romania may clear the way for up to 30 ships from Ukrainian ports currently waiting. This as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called on all countries at the UN to demand Russia stop using the Black Sea as, quote, blackmail. Now, Russia has launched a flurry of attacks on Ukrainian port infrastructure since walking away from the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Ukraine says it's now considering insuring the ships going through that grain corridor itself. Russia has also offered 50,000 tons of grain to a handful of African nations. Speaking of trade, Japan is already a top export customer of U.S. beef, but there's still untapped market potential. Michelle Rook joins us to look at how the U.S. cattle industry is taking a new approach when it comes to marketing their product to the next generation of consumers.
Cattle producers in the U.S. Meat Export Federation hosted a Japanese celebrity chef here in South Dakota to help expand U.S. beef exports in Japan. TV host and chef Rika Yukimasa toured South Dakota cattle operations, including the Kamak Ranch, to learn how U.S. beef is raised.
I learned that it's a life learning process to take care of the cattle as well as the pasture and then the grass and everything. And I learned the fact that so many people working in this industry are working so hard and taking care of the land and the cattle, not only for today, but for the next year, for the future.
She wants to share that with her audience, plus the positive attributes of U.S. beef versus highly marbled Japanese beef.
I want to tell the Japanese audience that how we can appreciate American beef in slightly different way from Japanese beef. For example, Japanese beef has a lot of marble, whereas American beef is a lean meat. And it's great when you eat with a chunk of beef or a grill or eat as a steak.
Kamak says engaging with Japanese consumers is key in expanding exports to this top customer.
You know, we've got 100+ species of native range that is still intact because we are raising cattle on it. It has not been put to plow. And it is, you know, it's nature continuing its life cycle and its ecosystem in a healthy, sustainable way. And I think it's important to share that message.
And he recognizes the importance of exports, especially of variety meats, to his bottom line.
A high-value market for those cuts is so important because what are we going to do with all the tongue? What are we going to do with all the short ribs? Things like that, the stomach, the tripe, the kidneys, stuff that maybe we don't have a market for domestically, but when we can export, you know, to Egypt or we can export to Japan, you know, short ribs to Korea, things like that. I mean, it's just adding value to us.
In fact, Japan bought a total of $2.3 billion of U.S. beef in 2022 alone. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
Soybean markets recover a bit during Thursday's trade. We'll have those details coming up next. And the joy of the big screen outside during the dog days of summer. We're off to the movies on the northern plains in the country. Soybeans bounce back on Thursday as traders take a closer look at the weather, and USDA announces another round of export sales to China. Michelle Rook has more in Markets Now.
Grain and livestock futures both mixed on Thursday. Scott Bradley with Crema Bradley joining us. And Scott, soybeans did see some recovery on Thursday. You know, do we try to hold a little weather premium in that market until we get some of these rains confirmed?
I think that's the last of the weather markets trying to see if cooler or wetter temperatures are going to happen or not. There's still some risk on the soybean crop yet. August is just so important. If we can get some moisture, it's really going to boost the yields on these soybeans. So getting a little bit of a boost. We've had some hot, dry weather. We need some of that moisture to materialize if it's going to continue a downward pattern or not. So all eyes on the weather yet.
Corn was down for the 8th day yesterday. How much more downside risk is there to that market, especially technically?
It's been an easy break for the corn here since they popped to 560. It's been a struggle ever since and unable to get some legs under it. There's been some moisture that has helped out some of the corn, and we're almost ready to completely turn the page away from a weather market in the corn sector, and we have what we have. And then we can turn the page and start to look at what's next for the corn. We're going to have to look at demand. We're going to have to look at the U.S. dollar and energy prices, and those have not been stories that have been aiding to the market. So the easy path now looks like we have that gap measurement down to 477, and then the recent low of 481 that we're going to target, and we're getting ever so close now. So that's going to be your line of support, and if it takes those out, it's going to be tough sledding from there.
And cattle market, nice recovery on Thursday.
Great recovery led by the feeders. And I'll say a little bit of the cash market. There was some regional bids in the north, started at 186, and then there was some 292 dressed bids, and there was silence. No trade happening. Boosts up to 187, still no trade. A little bit of rumors of some 188, and packers are showing some interest. I think that the producers still hold the leverage. We're trying to get some higher prices. Yes, there's a lot of money to be made when you sell these cattle, but it's so hard to replace them that they're willing to stand up and say I'm going to take a higher price on these if I'm going to sell them, because it's so hard to replace them. So the cash is leading, the cash feeders are leading. Still plenty of strength there.
Thanks for joining us. That is Scott Barlick with Crema Barlick Markets Now, and we'll have more Ag Day coming up.
Registration is open for the 2023 Pro Farmer Crop Tour, August 21st through the 24th. Attend one of our nightly meetings or join online as we gain insight on the 2023 growing season. Visit profarmercroptour.com/register to select the stop nearest you.
Now I want to look at what's going on regarding the potential for some flooding rains. Now the last couple of days, the 15 to 40 contour, that yellow, well, it was very small and over a specific location. What we're starting to see now as we move through the weekend and next week is the flooding potential. Now it's going to stay in kind of that green and the yellow, but much wider and bigger in and across the United States. Now notice the shape. I always like pointing these things out because it gives you an idea of the overall pattern. There is this green line, while it heads back down here to the southeast, the ridge is retreating back to the southwest. That's what we're picking up on the signals and why this area could see some substantial rainfall. That's going to be in between a shallow trough in and across the Midwest and that dominant ridge of high pressure down to the, I should say, northeast and the southwest. Now this is flooding potential coming up on a Saturday. As we go into the weekend where we need some rain, we want to avoid flooding. We want rain, but over an extended period of time, and we want just enough. We're going to be looking at the potential into South Dakota, Iowa, and Minnesota, where we could see about a 15 to 40% chance of some flooding rains coming through on Saturday. By Sunday, that shifts back to the east, which includes portions of Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, as well as into Wisconsin. We still stay in that 15 to 40%. What this is saying is we're following a piece of energy in the jet stream from the west to east. And I keep saying shallow because that trough isn't going to be digging down that far to the south. Now we just looked at the flooding potential with some rainfall. We overlaid the drought monitor, and where that energy is going to be coming through should help this drought situation. We don't want too much rainfall in a short amount of time, but some much needed rain could be coming through parts of Iowa into Wisconsin, Minnesota, and the Dakotas, where we're again seeing some of the very dry, latest drought monitor, a very dry, if not extreme to exceptional category into Missouri, Iowa, a little bit in Illinois and Wisconsin. So looking at that jet stream and where we go from here, the temperatures are going to continue to respond to where the jet stream is going to be dipping with some cooler air back up here into the Midwest. So there's Saturday at 3 a.m. Saturday and into Sunday, the rain chances start to come down from the north to the south, including portions of the Midwest. Let's start off in Oklahoma. Mostly sunny, high around 102, low of 74. Moses Lake, mostly cloudy, high around 87, low of 62. And you got Maryland, partly cloudy, high around 86 degrees.
Fire isn't always considered a good thing, but in some cases it can have real beneficial impacts on the land. We'll battle pests with a prescribed burn next. Ticks and flies can be a nuisance to livestock and people, but what's the solution to getting rid of them? Well, in this report from Kansas State, researchers are looking at the impact of burning them away safely.
Hello, we're here at the K-State Beef Stocker Unit to look at how prescribed burning affects tick populations on pasture. This study is looking at how prescribed burning in the spring, the summer, or the fall affects our tick populations. We're looking at the different types of ticks that we have, but also how many of these ticks we have. So what we've been doing is every 2 weeks we come out here and we do a tick drag and we set a trap and we find how many ticks we have on pastures that have either been unburnt for the past 4 years, burnt in the spring, burnt in the late summer, or burnt in the early fall. It's really important to do this kind of study because most farmers do some form of prescribed burning, and so what we really are trying to do is figure out what time of the year is most effective in controlling your tick populations. We really worry about ticks because they're external parasites. They consume blood of the animals, so you can have reduced production. But mainly they transmit some very dangerous pathogens like Anaplasma marginale. Early results, we're looking at the first few months of this study. It seems that burning definitely impacts your overall tick population. We're seeing significantly fewer ticks in pastures that are burnt irrespective of season. big difference there. So burning definitely does impact your tick populations. Right now, our early season data is suggesting that spring burning might be the most effective time in terms of reducing that tick population. The most important thing to remember is that ticks don't move, unlike our flies, which can fly and move to a new place. Where a tick falls off an animal is usually about the area that it will stay. So the most important thing with prescribed burning is making sure that you do a good burn. So anywhere under a tree, anywhere where there's a thicket, that is going to be a pocket where, if it's not burned completely, ticks can reside there, and animals tend to move into these areas because normally they're nice and shady and protected, and that's where they're picking up ticks. So always make sure that you get a good burn, that you're getting all the grass coverage taken care of. We don't want to be doing something to control our ticks and our hornflies that may be negatively impacting our dung beetle populations, because they're really good ecosystem warriors. They take the manure and bury it underground, which means that it does two important things. It removes a breeding habitat for our hornflies, but also our gastrointestinal nematodes. They hatch out from the manure pads and they climb up on the grass. If that manure, and then they're consumed obviously by other animals. If that manure is buried, it disrupts that life cycle. So we really want to make sure that our dung beetles are not negatively impacted from the burning. And what we've actually found is that, at least our early season counts, are that the dung beetles, we have higher number of dung beetles in pastures that are burnt on the spring. So in a stocker type situation, this is just before animals go out onto pasture. When we look at our hornflies, it seems, at least our early season data is suggesting, that there are a lower number of hornflies on cattle that are grazed on pastures that are either burnt in the spring or in the fall. And this most likely has to do with the insect's life cycle. So hornflies have a period where they're dormant. So over winter, they rest just below the soil and they hang out until it gets warm enough for them to emerge again. If you're burning in the spring and the fall, you're targeting that overwintering period, and that's why we think that those two seasons, at least early on, showed the most impact in terms of reducing the number of flies.
The silver screen has had many a magical moment, but not much beats the nostalgia of watching a modern movie at the drive-in. We'll visit Mobridge, South Dakota next. In this day and age of streaming movies on our TVs or even our phones, there's something special about seeing a movie on the big screen. It's even more special when that big screen is outside. In the late 1950s, there were as many as 4,000 drive-in movie theaters operating across the country. Today, there are less than 350 left, and one of them is in Mobridge, South Dakota. Jody Kurzman of AgDay affiliate KFYR takes us there.
Hi.
You could say Gretchen Olson.
Thank you. Enjoy the movie.
Is the face.
Enjoy the movie.
Of the Pheasant Drive-In.
Hi.
She is the first person.
How many do you have?
People see.
Hi.
When they come to a movie here.
They're like all excited. Enjoy the movie, guys.
Her younger sister Heidi calls herself the Pop Girl.
Yep. I do pops and slushies. That's my job.
Their parents, Jill and John, bought the theater in 2019.
How are you guys tonight?
The Pheasant Drive-In attracts movie lovers from Mobridge and beyond.
We get people, they're at the campgrounds camping, so they might be from out of state. We do get some Bismarck families who come down, Linton, Gettysburg. People come from all over.
Hi.
A trip here is a trip back in time. In the concession stand, the Olsons serve homemade barbecues made from a secret recipe that's as old as the drive-in.
You have to buy the theater in order to get the recipe.
These are the original speakers.
Those speakers,
the wires still work,
date back to 1960. When the theater first opened.
You can adjust the sound.
While the speakers are not new, the movies on the screen are.
We're a first-run theater.
That means the movies are new releases. On this night, The Flash is on the big screen. But an evening at the Pheasant is about more than just seeing a movie. It's about spending time together and enjoying the warm summer nights.
We can play around over here and we can watch the movie in the car or outside.
I can watch the movie outside. I can enjoy nature while watching the movie.
When the movie's running and you know, kids are running around and families are laughing and enjoying themselves. I would say that's my favorite part.
A nostalgic experience, creating yet another sweet summer memory.
Our thanks to Jody Kurzman and KFYR for sharing that story with us. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.